When a client comes in and says, I have an addiction, it can be drinking, it can be smoking, it can be gambling. All of these are only the symptoms of the unresolved issues that haven't been processed in early adult life, but childhood.
Kartika Alexandra.
Kartika Alexandra.
Founder of Maha Healing.
Hypnotherapist.
Triple H. Holistic Healing Hypnosis.
Our environment is so stressful today. We may not know differently, but all the science is showing we are way more stressed. This means we have to have better ways to manage the stress. If we do this when we're burnt out, Rodrigo, if we do this when we're burnt out, it's too late. But so many times parents do not know the actual impact they have on forming the child's future. Many times we don't realize how we program children with the little comments we make, such as, it brings tears to my eyes actually just saying it now. What is my deepest pain, my deepest wound? And I would say that it's the wound and pain of loneliness and aloneness.
So in order to understand what you do, maybe could you share one of the most deeply touching transformation stories from one of your clients?
This one was from a few weeks ago, which is why it's so fresh in my mind. I met this man and his family by chance at a dinner. And I had learned that he wanted to come and address his use of antidepressants. And he's about 60 years old and had been on antidepressants for about 20 or so years, very long time. So while I actually really support the use of antidepressants and taking them, in this case, he wanted to not be so dependent on them. And he also found that he was not actually benefiting as much from them. And you could see that there was a flatness to him and a bit of a weight to him. And I would say a bit of a sadness, sorrow. So his son and his wife were there as well. They brought him to the office. And in the session, the actual session, when we dived into the feeling that was leading to his agitation that would lead him to then take his antidepressants, we found ourselves in the root cause, because the holistic hypnotherapy I do, the integrative hypnotherapy I do, goes for the root cause. Where does this come from, this feeling and sensation? And we find ourselves at a very young age, the first one at 1-year-old, the next one at 8-year-old, and he's witnessing these memories. He doesn't consciously remember them, but in the state of hypnosis, you can access and tap into the subconscious and then the unconscious, which is where deeper repressed memories are. And he witnesses how alone he's felt being the son of diplomats, and how the career of his father and the support that the father needed from the mother left him and his brother very alone, feeling empty. And so the need to perform, the need to be present, the need to act a certain way, for example, was felt very strongly by him from a very young age. And so this grew and became bigger and bigger, that the lack of love, the lack of support, the lack of intimacy, the lack of, how are you feeling? What do you feel you want to do? That he didn't feel for all these decades led him to start to take antidepressants about 20 or so years ago, and ended up creating a whole type of lifestyle for him. In this session, having released the emptiness, the aloneness, the sorrow, because all children need intimacy like that, to have released it and managing to move into the feeling of forgiveness for the parents, which is a journey in itself, and to feel the actual gratitude that can come once we release the sorrow and the pain. This brought actually tears to my eyes in the session, which is when it's very moving, because you see there's life force and love coming back into his whole body. Witnessing this and witnessing his calmness appear again after releasing all the sorrow, I felt very moved, because after that, when he finished the session, 2 days later, he updated and was so pleased with his results. But then also his son wrote to me, and his son shared his joy for seeing his father have the spark in his energy, in his eyes. He'd never seen his father like that. And his wife also has reached out, also seeing the benefits in the sleep as well and in the intimate relationship that they have. So she also didn't know her husband like this. So this changes his life, his business, having become a successful businessman, but also now retiring. His son's perception of what a father can be, what a relationship and marriage can be, and the wife feeling all that she's felt all these years, not maybe understanding why he's been suffering or why he's been more introverted, to connect to them on a deeper level. So hearing this in that dynamic, in that larger, rippling out like that, this is so rewarding and so fulfilling, because here we're not just changing his life, we're also changing the son's life, his future marriage, and downwards into the other generations. Yeah, so we're changing a lot of levels here of how we can experience life. So hearing this and then reading the messages afterwards really is deeply fulfilling. Yeah.
Can you try to describe that feeling? How does it feel for you?
It's very expansive in the chest, a lot like what you were saying, Rodrigo, when you were saying your loving kindness. That loving kindness grows exponentially and it really opens up more. So there's a reward and a lot of giving, and a reward that comes into it. And this expansion it feels like I don't know another word, but it feels like a blessing to receive this, to know that there is good work being done and I'm actually carrying out something of value to someone else on a deeper level. Yeah. It brings tears to my eyes, actually, just saying it now.
Yeah, I can feel it. Wow, what a way to start our conversation. What are the main reasons why people come to you?
Yeah, we really get all kinds of topics. I mean, really all kinds of topics. Anything from small fears and phobias, from, I'm nervous when I have to give a speech. Something like that. We would even consider that a bit of a lighter topic, to more, we can say, delicate or maybe we can say complex topics, which have to do with complex PTSD, trauma, childhood trauma, or relationship trauma, financial trauma, and these can be much more ingrained in the individual's life, but sometimes generationally. When it's that case, we maybe need a few more sessions, So really the whole scope. It can be physical issues, psychosomatic issues. Yeah. Every time I wake up, I have a heavy chest and I can't breathe. It takes me a few minutes like that. Or it can be also emotional issues. Whenever my boss walks in, I feel very worried or nervous. And I haven't done anything wrong, but I always get worried. So we have a dynamic with authority here, but it can also be relating to wife or husband. Every time my wife leaves or my husband leaves, I feel incredible jealousy. This takes up energy, so then he cannot go and perform or work or she cannot be present at work or with her children. So we look at those. It can also be spiritual, and people may not even realize they have spiritual blocks or something like this. We don't look for those spiritual blocks, they just come up on their own. And so this can be related to how they can have more impact, their potentiality in not meeting it. This can be like that. And their connection to the family. This is a big one for a lot of individuals. Even if we don't feel like we're close to our family, the connection to family and making peace with it, this actually falls under emotional but spiritual component. Yeah, and so we have all these types of different topics. And sometimes we have very specific ones, like I want to become a better trader, financial trader. Sometimes it's more broad. But whatever is blocking the individual, that's what we're working with.
If you have enjoyed our episodes, it would help us a lot if you can subscribe to the channel. It helps us more than you can imagine, and you will get better content and guests. So don't forget to subscribe. Let's go back to the conversation. And do you know what's the main root cause for what you just shared?
It depends on the client, but of course, I would say 70 to 80% of most of my clients will go to a root cause, to an event underneath the age of 7, 8 years old. Yeah, 7 to 8 years old. Underneath that age, so many events take place that we are not aware of. That's why it's in the subconscious, unconscious. We cannot retrieve them on a conscious level unless it's strong emotions. 7 all the way down to birth, because we already know that there's a lot of data and science. Anyhow, before it even came out, we were seeing it with our clients. Birthing experiences can significantly impact the way we relate to life, to everything in life, everything. And then, of course, in the womb. In the womb is included for everything underneath 7 years old. And in the womb, when I say in the womb, we're talking first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. There's also a lot of science to this now. We didn't have science and we just knew our clients were going there on their own. We weren't guiding them there. They went there. And then we would release whatever was happening there with the client doing the work themselves, emotional release. And then they would find that their issues and blocks would disappear after 3 or 4 days after the session. So 70 to 80% things happen under 7 years old, usually relating to family, usually related to parents, and caregivers, but it can also be deaths or perhaps big losses, maybe lack of emotional intimacy and support, which is very, very important. Then we have about 10 or so percent that have to do, we would say, or maybe 10, let's make it 10 to 20% that have to do with things such as generational trauma that do not come from this life. And so the client, whether they believe in this, whether they're even exposed to this idea, they will find themselves in a scene that seems quite connected to them, but they don't feel like it's there. And they see it, say, this is my grandfather or my great-grandfather or great-grandmother. And we do work in that scene. And then they find that their issues and blocks are resolved. So you don't have to believe in it for it to actually be effective. And then in that 10 to 20%, because about 10%, we have something like, we can say if you believe or not, it's up to you. You can call it imagination if you want, but some people will find themselves in what we call a past life. Yeah, so you don't have to ascribe to the idea, but they see themselves in a place, in a space that's really different from everything they know. It doesn't feel like their ancestry. And then here we work something out, perhaps in the way they passed away in that life, perhaps in the dynamic they had, and then it resolves in this life quite quickly. So for us, it doesn't matter where we go. Just let's go to the root cause, wherever we need to go, and we help and resolve whatever the issue is there. But 70, 80% this life, childhood.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
For me, it was a big part when I understood like that most of my blocks were coming from the childhood. That was a big moment for me. I was, of course, shocked, but also very happy because it allowed me to also to go deeper. Maybe you can share a few examples on like how those blocks sometimes are formed.
Yeah, I don't want to say anyone's at fault, especially not parents. So I have to preface it. But so many times parents do not know the actual impact they have on forming the child's future. And it's hard to say this without having some compassion because we are already going to be more stressed as parents, especially in the modern world. That being said, many times we don't realize how we program children with the little comments we make, such as, if you have sisters or brothers, or if you have a certain trait that you're good at, this is the athletic one. This one is the smart one. Or the aunts and the uncles saying to the child, you're the smart one. You should dress better. You don't dress well enough. You're not pretty enough. These are little programs. If we repeat it enough times, then the child receives, I am the smart one. I am the athletic one. And that becomes the program our subconscious, unconscious runs with, that our conscious mind develops from. But imagine getting the program, you're so needy. Stop crying. Stop being so demanding. Just be nice. Nice girls don't get angry. These are comments that are very commonly shared by many cultures, actually. Nice girls don't do this. Mommy doesn't like it when you do that, when it's a moment of expression. All these things are so subtle and they create programs. Now, habitually, it'll make a program, but also if there's strong emotions. So if someone says something in a critical way and there's rejection and shame, it usually becomes a program too. So I'm not saying we have to tiptoe and do everything, be very hyper aware, but we have to be aware that the child's mind does not operate in the way our adult mind works. The whole point of being a child is that you absorb everything so you can best survive in this world. So you trust your parents to teach you everything you need to do and operate as, so that you can best carry out and survive as an adult. So we gain all this information and we find that the world has changed and we're stuck with this information that is not suitable anymore. So if our parents have had a lot of maybe difficulties and wars, which is all of our other generations, war, famine, difficulties, we will inherit those through the actions and the words of our parents. So that's how it can be very unconsciously done. And then of course, consciously done. It can also be in the purposeful shaming of a child or the teacher, picking on one child, these kinds of things. Yeah. And I do feel inherently that at the base, we really know when we are actually helping a child or if we're really hurting the child. That's my sensation, because even in the sessions when I work with parents and teachers, and we know when we're doing something that is of pain to the child.
Tell me more about that. How do you know?
The client, they can feel, they can sense that as they're reacting, they have a justification for the reaction to their child. But if we go deeper and deeper and deeper and we release the reason of the reaction, the root cause of however they may be getting angry with their child. For example, a father, in this case is a rather, the types of cases I work with are like this. So he couldn't help it. He'd go home and he'd always beat his child. He didn't want to do this, but he'd always beat his child. And sure enough, from his upbringing, that's how his father was. And this was what we would call a very childhood trauma, a very intense one, where he would be locked in the room and he would be beaten and the brothers would be eating at the table and he'd have to listen. He couldn't eat. So we had that kind of case. In this case, he knew it was hurting the child, couldn't control it, And this is where we went. And sure enough, of course, he could feel the pain he was bringing to his son. Why? Because of course he felt that pain. And this perpetual cycle continues onwards and onwards and onwards. So if we get them to feel how connected they actually are by doing these actions, they feel it, they take us there, then it resolves itself. And it's incredible how powerful the mind is if we just give it space to really connect and to be witnessing and aware of the consequences of our action. Yeah, and to feel it, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so sure enough, it stopped.
Yeah.
So we have to go into it.
Yeah, but also I think parents, they're humans and they're also dealing with their own blocks, right?
Exactly.
And of course, most of the parents, they don't do intentionally, but it is true that it impacts the child. Wow, I'm even feeling something in my heart, which is, this is so hard. Yeah. Maybe you can share like some examples, how like those examples that you gave, how it is linked to some situations today in the adult life.
Of course. So very interesting. When the client comes in, for example, and says, I have an addiction, a compulsion. It can be drinking, it can be smoking, it can be gambling, it can be even shopping addiction or compulsion, or even lying. All of these are only the symptoms of the unresolved issues that haven't been processed in early adult life or adult life trauma, but childhood. So they come in and they say, I want to look at my smoking. I'm smoking a lot. I have never, and I say this so far to date, so maybe it'll change in the future, I have never had a client not go to a trauma from childhood, the smoking itself. Yeah, so people they just want to stop smoking, but that's not really the root cause.
Yeah.
The issue is not from, my desire to smoke, it's from not being able to cope with a strong emotion. Usually not being able to, having someone regulate with them, regulate their emotions and pain. So the act of smoking becomes breath work with toxins, but smoking. And it's understandable. They didn't have an outlet, So they come in for that, and then they don't expect to go to their trauma and root cause. And so here we are doing deep inner work. Yeah. So we have to inform the client that we're going to do root cause work, not just stop smoking, because if we stop the smoking and we don't deal with the root cause, another compulsion will develop. Stop smoking, they may start overeating. They may start overworking, because the fire that's causing the need to smoke has to still come out, the actual smoke from the fire in the subconscious, unconscious. So we got to address the reason why, so they don't go overeating, over gambling, over even sex, all of these other compulsions. It can be like that. So another one, he's a very, I guess he would be well recognized, but he's an actor. And he comes in because actually before every beginning of any movie that he's about to start filming, he gets frozen. and he just freezes on set. Now, everybody already knows about this on set, so they're okay with it. But it takes so much energy. It's about 3 or 4 minutes of just sweaty palms. The heart is racing, cannot breathe. And this really makes him feel out of control and actually also ashamed, because he's well recognized. He has to go through this process, and it takes him so much energy to overcome it. And so sure enough, this comes from his early childhood. Even though he's successful now, taking a lot of energy to go through this first few minutes, early childhood, being in school, having to present and seeing his father and mother there, knowing his father is a very strict disciplinarian, the pressure of failing in the eyes of the father. The father's doing his best. He doesn't really know. He just wants his son to be, performing very well in school. So, and so this pressure there with the kids all watching and the teacher, all of them evaluating. So yeah, we release it that way. And then in that moment, releasing all of it, now he no longer carries it out. It's phenomenal, yeah.
Wow.
The mind knows where to go, Rodrigo. The mind knows where to go. We just have to give it space to connect the dots and release the energetic or emotional content in there. Then it neutralizes it. That's how easy it can be.
So maybe we can go deeper, so that you say that the mind knows where it has to go. So there's the conscious mind,
right,
and the subconscious mind. Yeah. So as you say, there's a lot happening on the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Maybe can you help us to understand how the conscious and subconscious mind works, and what are the real impacts on our life?
Let's have a little visualization with the conscious mind being the tip of the iceberg. Maybe you've seen such a photo, where you have the water. The tip of the iceberg is the conscious mind. We can say that part of our mind is the captain of the ship, the one who decides we're going to go left or right. I want to eat this. I want to wear that. I would like to achieve this goal. This is what I want for myself. This is the part of our mind that can go into the past and reflect on the beautiful time I had with my family or the painful time I had with my family. So this part has an understanding of time. All good. This part will learn through things like knowledge, as this moment here that we're sharing, through different videos, reading, self-help books. Great. We need information like that. So education is important. We need that. It steers the captain of the ship to the right way to reach the goals. Then we have the water line, which is what I would call the critical filter. We all have one of these. And this is something we work with, where if people have a critical filter, which is what develops at the age of 7, you tell me, oh, Kartika, I love your scarf. And if I feel, oh yeah, I like my scarf too, my critical filter opens up and your words go in and come into the subconscious, unconscious part. And I feel good. My emotions, have change, maybe the hormones change and everything. But if you say, I love your scarf, and I'm embarrassed because maybe I didn't wash it or something, I can use a critical filter and reject it, So we developed this at 7 or 8. Now, below that, we have the subconscious. Subconscious mind, we have easy retrieval of memories that are not in the unconscious, which is repressed. We can't access those memories on a conscious level. But here, we also get to feel a little bit, I feel tense, I feel anxious in the body. Now, if we are connected to our physical body and the sensations and the subtle energies there, which hopefully we all are, we can use the subconscious mind to identify what I'm picking up from my environment. So here, then we have the unconscious, which is the part of our mind that's running everything else: heartbeat, lungs, breathing, expanding, hormone release, oxytocin or cortisol release, clenching and unclenching of the hip, and the muscles here and everything, all the muscles. We're not even aware of this. But this is where a lot of the deep programming is running. So here's an example. You say, I love your scarf, which you did say.
Yes.
Or maybe. And so when we say that, in this moment, I am not even aware. All of us are not aware. This is why if it's possible, we have to expose ourselves to more knowledge about who we are, which includes our mind. I have the critical filter here. I see you. You say something about my scarf. Before you even say something, I see you. And all these reactions of unconscious programming, the color of the suit, what I feel about that, your hair, everything about you, the room, I'm already calculating and making all these deductions. There's so many different reactions, trillions in 1 second, trillions. But all I see is the conscious, little bit on the upside of the water, just a little bit appears. And I feel, oh, I feel good. But actually, there's a million, trillions of reactions. I feel bad, I feel weird, I feel shame, I feel whatever it may be. You say, I like your scarf, and here, it can be really strong emotion. But underneath, so many things. Here is where all this stuff is happening. That makes me not be able to be present, not be able to be really centered, not be able to like respond to you in maybe the most eloquent way if I wanted. Because so many things are happening and it's happening in my body. I'm only aware of this. No one really knows what's happening here. That's why we got to go into the unconscious mind. Find out what's happening. So that when I see, for example, in the case of my client, the client says, every time my husband leaves, I get very jealous. I don't know why. She's only aware of the jealousy here. But here we have the root cause of her mother and the father and how the mother used to feel about the husband leaving because the husband, her father, was indeed having an affair. And she was witnessing this in silence because the parents didn't think she knew what was going on. So the pains of her mother, the pains of her father, the pains of her childhood, now kicking in, and only a little bit, oh, my husband's walking out. I don't know why, but I feel so jealous. Yeah, this is how it looks. So we need to work in here. If we release the emotions and the energetic and the different elements in here, then everything gets calmer, much calmer. And then we don't need to deal with anything that comes up that's too intense and overtakes our conscious mind, the captain of the ship. We want our captain of the ship to say, I want to go here. I want to go straight to this goal, to whatever the goal is in my family or finance and whatnot. I want to go there. And everybody else underneath, the whole crew, the ship, goes that way. Many times, I want to go there. I want to eat healthy. I want to, no longer, maybe they're pre-diabetic. I don't want to have sodas, but I crave sodas. I'm not going to have sodas. Soda's not good for me. Captain of the ship, unconscious, the crew members, I'm tired. I'm just going to have one soda. And then you have a soda. You don't have an alignment with the captain and the crew. We want that to be aligned. Things happen way easier in life. Life is way more enjoyable when that happens. So you got to go underneath into the subconscious, unconscious, find out all those programs and all those reactions.
So what you say is that all the programs, even like when we are in our childhood, they are stored in our subconscious mind, right? And even if we want to do things from our conscious mind, if there's a disconnect, there's where the blocks happen.
Correct.
Because the captain wants to go in one direction, but the crew maybe goes in another direction.
The body, the feelings, the reactions, yes.
And also there's a huge amount of energy being happening in this process, right?
Totally.
Wow.
Totally. And think of how much effort it takes. Exactly. I want to go there, but my body doesn't want to get up. It's really a lot. It's taxing.
Maybe a lot of our audience are like working professionals. Do you have any example of how this translates like in our daily work?
It happens in such small, subtle ways, such as even waking up in the morning, the type of sensation they have about going to work. This sets the tone for the whole day. They may not even recognize, and a lot of people don't recognize the weight they wake up with because they're so used to it. They've identified with it. They don't realize this is not really who they are. This is an amassed, compounded amount of energy from their upbringing, and it's not even part of their story now, but it's still in their body. The idea that if you don't remember your past or you don't want to think about it so it's done, this is faulty and invalid. So I'd like to really challenge that yes, your past influences directly how you're doing today and will completely define your future. We have to see what we can do to really find and release everything we no longer need to carry. So I know that's a big thing, that no, your past is your past. We need that maybe as a conscious programming to make sure we let go, but to really properly do this, we got to go deeper. So in this case, just by waking up, how do they wake up? This type of vitality will influence how they react to their employees or boss, how they react to their environment, to the challenges. If they're working professionals, we're always going to have challenges, of course. How do they react to stress? All of this compounds and then affects their health, family, finance in the future, if not now. So these are all going to be in a subtle way, but then big ways. For example, the boss comes in, right? The reaction you have to the boss, or the reaction you have to challenges in your entrepreneurial, new startup, like how you react to that. that reaction can really define how the team feels towards you.
Yeah.
It can define the decisions you make.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
these are very important things to consider now as you're building your startup. So this is how it looks. Also, the life balance you have. Most of the let's say the businessmen or maybe 60, 70-year-olds who are already retiring, they've already made it. They've reached their financial goals and their different careers goals and so forth. A lot of the times I work with them to make peace with how they did not manage or recognize the importance of their health and family. And so this component here is something that they didn't think mattered to them at the time, but now we have to work through that. So the idea that you can just do whatever you need now and you don't, or you'll have to deal with the consequences later, that can be, you can avoid that. So these men that I work with, as well as women, the grief that they have to go through for not having properly taken care of their health and their family, and to feel the void that comes with the family not being, maybe not wanting to be as close to them as they had hoped, this is painful. And so this comes also from the working professionals. So what is quality of life is the question we have to ask. What is the quality of life you want as a working professional? Not now only, not in the next goal, but 20 years from now. If you want to achieve your career goals and your financial goals, that's fantastic. But why don't we consider doing this in a way that's harmonizing for yourself and your family? Because the things that are important at this age or at this time is not going to be the same in the future. It will not. That's a part of the cycle of life. So we have to consider these things. And if we have too much obsession on one, it will take away energy from the other, you know? Yeah, so it's way more, let's say complex, but also so simple, you know, everything affects everything, Rodrigo, you know? It's just the way it is.
So there's a people have a lot of blocks, right? And you mentioned that you need to go deeper. Maybe now you can share, how do you help like your clients to go deeper? What is the process?
First, we only help clients when it's the right time to go into that block. Because we all have blocks, right? All the time, but we don't want to address every single one of them if it's not the right time or it's not necessary, you know? Some of them are very suitable. If someone says, I want to stop smoking, and then they come in and we see that they actually have zero management techniques or tools. And I say zero because sometimes they don't realize they even have that. So they're burnt out. We have to first give them other tools before we even say stop smoking. This is how I operate. And I know a lot of people will not agree with this, but that's still how I find to be the most effective way to help clients. So first, what is the best topic to look at that will best help you today? The way we do it, we first have a pre-talk. Get to know a little bit more how you experience the block. The way someone experiences, for example, fear of public speaking or fear of speaking up. This particular block is felt differently in each and every individual. So that's why I don't really go for generalized, let's say, labels or anything. Someone says, I have depression. What is that to you? That's more interesting. From there, we identify how they're experiencing it. And then in the hypnotherapy portion, which are 3-hour-long sessions, the 2.5 hour long, where we're in the state of hypnosis, which is nothing but just lying back, eyes closed, state of relaxation. Clients can open their eyes at any point. That's another maybe assumption people have, is that you have no control. This whole session, you are in full control. I'm just here to make sure you completely go through the process to the more painful parts of it so you can really let it all go. But it's your process and you can open your eyes and stop at any point. I have not had anyone do that just yet in 10 years. But we go into it. We find the root cause by relaxing their brain waves from the beta brain waves down to alpha, theta. Here we can access all the unconscious elements that we cannot access in the state of beta brainwave. So we go in, and as we witness the root causes, the person themselves, the client themselves, witnesses, sees the information themselves. I'm not saying you go to your 2-year-old. How do I know? This is your journey. This is your story. So you go and find out where it comes from. You collect the wisdom. You collect the knowledge. And you release all that needs to be released. And that's my job, to make sure we do it completely. Because in it, it's a lot of emotions coming up. Then we close it up by leaving some positive programs in.
Oh, I see.
But you know, Rodrigo, every time I have done this, the client's mind already knows what the best programming is. I have very rarely had to encourage them to say, I am healthy or I am loved. No, they feel it. It's by getting rid of the emotional, negative, or uncomfortable sensations that automatically the mind brings in the exact opposite, the polarity, and harmonizes it, balances it. So if they felt unloved or judged and undervalued, when we release that with the today adult client in the witnessing the childhood, they automatically feel this love return. They automatically feel it.
Wow.
I don't have to do anything. This is how powerful our mind is. We just have to get a little bit moving of the negative or heavier energy out. Yeah, and then all the love can come in, all the feeling of, yes, I am valued. They can now see reality as that. It's very quick. This is why, it's an awesome experience to witness every time, how the mind is so powerful.
So what you say, the mind already knows where it has to go.
Yes.
We know
Yes.
where we have to go.
Yes.
Wow, that's so powerful.
Yeah. I don't know if this is okay if I push a little further, because underneath the unconscious,
Please.
underneath the unconscious mind, there is something we call the superconscious. The superconscious is the part of us that is here to carry out our mission or purpose in this life. If you're more spiritually inclined, maybe you call this a soul or a spirit, but you don't have to be spiritually inclined. But this is the part that is here to carry out our purpose and mission. This is the part that brings in that energy. It's so powerful to release the murkiness, the gunk, the unnecessary blocks in the unconscious, subconscious, so that the reason why I'm here to do what I'm doing in this life can finally be moving through all the elements of the mind into the conscious, the captain of the ship. This is the part. You already know. You already know everything. Let's clear the rest out so that this connection can be made. Yeah.
Wow, that is so good.
Yeah. That's the goal. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite impressive to see how no matter what the story of the client's life is, no matter their age, their background, their struggles, this always exists. Always.
So maybe now you can tell us, like, so what can we do? Like, what are let's say the 3 things we can do in order to take care of our mental and emotional health?
So I have a more systematic approach to it, and I think you may already know. One of them is, as we take care of our physical body, we must invest and take care of our mental and emotional health. What this looks like, you wake up, you brush your teeth. Can we please add 5 minutes each and every day to taking care of our mental and emotional health? This allows elements that we no longer need to carry onwards to come up and get processed out. So these are 5 minutes each and every day. If you don't have 1 hour for meditation, that's fine, but 5 minutes, amazing. Or if you don't want to meditate, journal, anything to bring you back to you. Our environment is so stressful today. We may not know differently, but all the science is showing we are way more stressed. And for women, 20 times more stressed than women 20 years ago. So we are way more stressed than we need to be or should be. This means we have to have better ways to manage the stress.
Love it.
Yeah. We can't, if we do this when we're burnt out, Rodrigo, if we do this when we're burnt out, it's too late. It's tiring for our organs and our mind and everything. So let's do it before. Of course, you can recover when you're burnt out still. So please, 5 minutes at least. Then, as you would do with a doctor checkup, maybe you have a checkup every 6 months or 1 year. Please do that. Have someone you really trust that you can have a checkup with that's a subconscious, unconscious, maybe. It doesn't have to be hypnotherapy, but something where you go deeper into the emotional release. Now, mine is a little extreme, but that's because of the work I do. I go into silent meditation for 12 days every year. But that's because of the work I do. If that's not suitable, then maybe you have someone you can do deeper inner work with, somatic body work, because somatic body work is going to be something that also touches into the subconscious, unconscious, or a certain type of hypnotherapy. If it's just clinical hypnosis, it won't do deeper healing. So every day, 6 months from, or 3 months. That's some of my clients. They book in every 3 or 6 months already. And in between, you have interim checks where, be aware. Why do I feel this way? What's happening in my chest? Why do I feel that way? Observe who you are. Have the chance to explore who you are. Like, who are you really? Really, who are you? We are really just a set of programs. And it sounds very depressing to hear it like that, but it's actually also full of potentiality.
Exactly.
If I am a set of programs with maybe Indonesian backgrounds, Canadian background, growing up speaking these languages, then I can actually add in any other programs that I would like to have to create the type of life I would like to have for myself and my family. So let's identify where these blocks are actively, proactively. And it's so much fun, Rodrigo, when people come in to want to do that. These are the ones who want to get to the next level. This is the issues, where should we go? I mean, you really create your life. This is so much fun. Yeah, and so I always recommend that. Of course, in addition to sleeping well, eating well, and all of these other things. Yeah.
Well, I can feel your passion and
super excited.
energy and excitement about it. I think maybe I don't want to miss the opportunity for you maybe to share. We spoke about the role of parents, and how sometimes they don't do it on purpose, but with their actions, when they are raising their kids, they do impact and they create blocks with their kids. What are the things that parents shouldn't do in order to protect the kids and there's less blocks?
Right. This one requires, I would say, days of a workshop because it's so important. But I'm going to give you a briefing on it just because it's valuable. One, that the number one I see is not providing emotional intimacy and safety with your child, not doing it. We have to understand, hopefully sooner than later, that not paying attention or not being aware or not acknowledging in a deeper way that the child's emotional well-being is as important as other developmental things like food and shelter. We have to address this first and foremost. What does this mean? It means that the father and the mother also need to be somewhat regulated, also need to be somewhat able to address their own emotional state. This is why there's a big disconnect with this, because if the child is experiencing these things and the parent hasn't learned how to do that or doesn't feel comfortable with maybe fear or anger or sadness that the child's exhibiting, they can shut down. So it's unconscious. It's not the parents, are not doing their job properly. They didn't know. So the emotional well-being of the child, that's what they really need to be taking care of. Now, if we have something else that I see a lot is overprotecting the child. This really limits the potentiality of the child. Allow the child to get hurt. Allow the child to feel difficult experiences. Just make sure you give them the tools to recover from those difficult experiences. So the overprotection has created a sense of suffocation in adult clients that I work with. They don't understand, but they feel trapped. They don't, in their relationships, in their work, everything is fine on the outside. Why are they complaining? Sure enough, the suffocation, and if it comes up like this in the sessions, like a net around their body. They feel they can't breathe as much because mother is always protecting, father's always making sure he gives his advice and so forth, overdoing it. So you have to also have the trust in the child, These are really key components here. These are the two main ones. What should they not do? Now, this is, of course, I understand we have different cultures and such, but using any type of physical, mental, emotional violence or abuse. 100% the science is showing this is not actually ideal in any way, shape, or form. But even if it's I understand that this is not always, this is a very delicate topic actually, because sometimes it's overwhelming and the child needs to learn a little bit their constriction. But if we do employ emotional abuse or physical abuse or mental abuse, we are changing the brain development. This here means that the child grows with a different brain than a child who doesn't have this exposure to these types of events. That brain, it's not that they're weak, they're depressed. The brain is different. So we cannot expect them to carry out actions that we would expect someone who hasn't been exposed to this kind of experiences. We have to understand the brain develops differently. So everything they do at this moment is key because it develops the rest of the child's life. Affects it. Yeah, so these are all the types of different elements. The other one that I would really encourage every time from all the client, this is strictly from the client work, is providing them opportunities for self-exploration. So, this is interesting too, because I know that the cultures and history influences this, but many times just making sure the child has toys and has different, maybe let's say they're safe in the house is one thing, but to actually engage with them, to speak with them, to help them explore who they are, what they feel, this permission to do so really allows them to go out into the world, really allows them to go out and actually express who they are. If we don't do that from a young age, it's very difficult. They can still do it. It's just that they have to go through way more roadblocks. So these opportunities are key. And what does that look like? Sitting with them, talking with them, discussing with them. This exchange is so important. And today, with the use of cell phones, mothers and fathers on their cell phones, this is really just more recent when I work with children. And I see that if the parents are not emotionally attuned to their child, or they are on their phones a lot, this turns out, I found out, because I was wondering, why is this happening to all these children that I'm seeing in my work, but of course it could be different in other people's work, that the brain development, especially the left prefrontal cortex and a whole bunch of other parts of the brain too, but especially that, doesn't wire in the same way, doesn't grow in the same way. Fascinating to see. And you see a lot of this in ADHD and studies and so forth. But the use of cell phones when you're with your baby or child, how detrimental that is. It's hard, right? Because today we all use iPads and phones and computers. How to make sure there's structure to that, that's really, really important. So we ask our parents of the children that we work with to also partake in this, because it's not just the child, it's the parents as well. And when we work with the parents, it automatically changes the child. Automatically. Yeah. So these kinds of things.
And I think it goes back to what you said before. It's also about the parents do the work so that they can work on themselves, on their self-awareness. That is one. And then the second is be more aware about all these behaviors that they do, how it impacts the children.
Totally.
Wow.
I think there's one more. Sorry. The child doesn't understand jokes underneath the age of 6 or 7. The child doesn't understand when you make a joke. So everything is taken quite literally in the child's mind. When you say something like, oh, you're getting fat. Oh, you love to eat. As an adult, we understand that's a joke. But as a child, we don't. So we may react in the behavioral kind of response that is appropriate because we've seen that with our adult imprints, caregivers. But the child still experiences deep emotions. So, oh, you're so needy, even in a joking way. This is confusing to the child. So really, this joking of trying to teach them or even say, you should be smarter, you're better than this. I understand the meaning behind some of these sentences and why parents want to say it this way. But we have to consider the emotional impact of this and to avoid joking with the child in that dynamic. If you want to, let's respect the process of a child. Do that when they have already been able to develop into alpha brainwaves after the age of 8. After that, the peers are more important. Social networking and friends and all that is more important. So the parents will have very little impact because the foundational ones are from pre-birth to 7, 8 years old. So we want to consider what we can do to really best help our children. Please avoid joking, avoid shaming, avoid anything that may cause them to feel confusion about who they are and what they can do.
And also comparing, right? What you said before. Avoid comparing the kids.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because it's what you say is like till the age of 8, like the kids, they didn't develop the half a brain so that they can distinct,
Totally.
you know, and have a rational
Totally.
mind to distinct what is a joke or not.
Totally.
They just absorb it,
Yeah.
right? And that's
Yeah.
why you say that a lot of the blocks, they are formed at this age.
Right. I mean, do you remember what happened to you below the age of 7 or 8, Rodrigo?
Not
No.
much.
Yeah. This is all in the unconscious, subconscious.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Good. Now, I think I would like maybe for you to share a bit about your journey. Like, what has been one of the biggest breakthroughs for you in your personal development journey?
Yeah. So I'm continuously in personal development because part of my work, but also part of my desire to understand how our minds work. I would say because of my upbringing and my childhood and my early adult life, I found it very difficult and a lot of suffering took place. And this is all very subjective, of course, because externally may not have seemed that way. And so I was wanting to understand, well, who really am I? And is this how life needs to be? You know, why are we here? Why are we going through all of this incessant suffering? And so I was exposing myself to a lot of different modalities of healing and wellness. And then one of the ones that I still continue to this day is the silent meditation retreats. And I started doing them about 12 years ago, about 1 or 2 a year. So 10 or 12 days of silence. And in one of them, it was about 4 years after I started regularly having the silent meditation retreats in my life. I was sitting in meditation probably right in the middle of day 6 of 12. And at this point, as I was mentioning, the mind starts to calm because you're not speaking, you're not reading, you're not avoiding, you have to sit there. You have to just be. I felt this incredible amount of bliss appear from inside my chest, in my core, and a feeling of peace and awe. And I remember sitting there for the first time feeling this, not the fleeting happiness, but just a steady movement of peace and awe and calmness radiate out. And I remember in my mind thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And you know, in that moment, the mind is so quick. Is this enlightenment? Attachment, ego, you know? Is this what I want more? And I remember my teacher saying, just go slow, just experience it as it is. Yeah. So I just witnessed it and felt it. And it radiated out into all of my body.
Beautiful.
And immediately through what I would say is around us, our field, and into the room. And as it was expanding outwards, and for me, it felt so long, maybe just a few minutes, maybe even less. When I felt it, I felt like I broke through a threshold where the capacity to even feel such peace, awe, and calmness in a very centered and grounded way was now possible. And I had never felt that before. I had never felt that kind of peace and groundedness and feeling of awe that this is life. This I had never felt. And it came so beautifully that it kept me going. Because many times there were times I wanted to give up, you know, on life and everything. I told my teacher and he said, this is fantastic that you feel that. Keep on going. The goal here is that you allow this to extend more and more and more until it just becomes a steady current of your life, the more prominent one. Because previously prominent was not that feeling. It was pain and agitation and heaviness, you know, and anger and all of this. Now it was going to be replaced with this. So we just work to let that unfold more and more and more. When I felt that, I knew things were going to completely change dramatically. And it took many, many, many years for me to get there. But it felt worth it all in that moment. Yeah. Things started to change. Yeah.
Wow, what an experience.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for that.
Good, so we're coming to the end. I have only one more question, which is like, maybe people ask you a lot of questions, but what is one question that not many people ask you and you would love to answer?
The question that a lot of people, actually nobody really asks me, is what is my deepest pain, my deepest wound? And I would say that it's the wound and pain of loneliness and aloneness. that feeling this from such a young age as the most prominent experience of my life, that I'm so alone and so lonely, both. Even though I have family that love me, even though I have people around me, even though, all of this is there, to feel so alone. That pain and wound, I did not understand how it was going to be the driving force to why I do what I do now, to be comfortable to connect so deeply and intimately for just a few hours, or with my partner or my friends. I did not understand that that would be my actually driving force and gift. From there, I could understand how I could complement or balance it. But that wound, and how I think we all feel that at some level, but maybe it was more prominent for me, how that wound really allowed me to understand how disconnected we are, and how actually it is our own journey, and how we have to be accountable for ourselves. But yet the joy of having the people we love in our life, and to feel that love now, to balance out all of the pain and all the aloneness and all the loneliness that at least I personally felt I grew up with. Yeah. So this wound became the biggest gift for me, actually, in the end, now that I've moved through it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. This was so good. I'm really happy want to have a conversation with you. For me, hypnotherapy was a very important part of my personal development journey. It helped me to go deeper, to understand blocks that I had, for example, with my mom. And through hypnotherapy, I was able to work on a lot of it. So I'm really happy to create more awareness.
Amazing.
Hypnotherapy, yes, but to keep working on ourselves and understanding that we all have, let's say, a baggage, and if the need to work on ourselves will help us to expand and to have better lives. So it was such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. Thank you for having me. Thank you. I appreciate so much the work you're doing to get this type of information out, that we are able to change our life. We are able to increase our quality of life. And we are able to reach our goals, whatever they may be.
And as you say, our mind already knows where it has to go.
Yes.
Good.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much.